What if dementia didn't start with forgetting names? What if it started with forgetting who you are? When most people hear the word dementia, they think of memory loss. They picture a loved one asking the same question repeatedly or forgetting where they live. But what if the earliest signs of dementia have nothing to do with memory? What if it begins not with forgetting facts, but with a slow and eerie shift in personality, behavior, and identity itself? Today, science tells us that dementia can start long before memory problems appear. In some people, strange emotional responses or rigid routines show up years earlier, but they're dismissed as quirks, aging, or even just bad moods. These are not quirks, they're warnings, and they might be the only clue you get before irreversible damage sets in. In this video, we'll break down 9 of the weirdest early signs of dementia, signs most people ignore until it's far too late, but if you catch them early, you might buy yourself or someone you love more years of clarity, connection, and time. 1. Imitating others. Linda was 72 when things started to shift. She had always been independent and confident, a retired school principal with a strong sense of self. But slowly, she began mimicking others around her. At first, it was her hairdresser's tone, then a neighbor's gestures. Eventually, she began copying TV personalities, phrases, mannerisms, even their clothing. This wasn't flattery or boredom. It was a symptom of frontotemporal dementia. As the frontal lobes deteriorate, the part of the brain responsible for personality, inhibition, and self-awareness, people begin to lose the internal boundary that defines me. The result is unconscious mirroring. People with this form of dementia often become a collage of the people around them because their own internal identity is dissolving. This isn't personality change, it's personality breakdown. 2. Over-politeness and formality. Jim, a 68-year-old retired trucker, wasn't the type to sugarcoat things. Then one day he started calling everyone sir and ma'am. His grandkids, the cashier, even his dog. Every interaction became stiff and overly formal. This was an early clue: semantic dementia. It affects the parts of the brain that help interpret emotional nuance in social context. As those skills fade, people often revert to rote politeness to compensate. It's not courtesy, it's confusion. They're using rehearsed manners to mask the fact that they can't quite follow what's happening emotionally in a conversation. It may seem charming at first, but it's a red flag. 3. Moral rigidity and obsession with rules. Anna, 74, had always cared about her community, but suddenly she became the neighborhood enforcer, calling the HOA about recycling bins, reporting overgrown lawns, and reprimanding people for minor violations. 4 years later, she was diagnosed with early Alzheimer's. Damage to the prefrontal cortex reduces flexibility. What was once a reasonable moral compass turns rigid and absolutist. People become obsessed with what's right, unable to read nuance or adapt to context. To others, it looks like stubbornness, but it's the brain losing its ability to see gray areas. Black and white thinking is a neurological symptom, not a personality trait. 4. Inappropriate cheerfulness. At her husband's funeral, Margaret, 76, smiled and laughed. When someone mentioned his old fishing hat, she chuckled aloud. Her children were horrified. She didn't mean to be insensitive. She didn't even realize it was odd. This was early frontotemporal dementia. The regions responsible for emotional regulation had already started to erode. The result? Mismatched emotional expression. Sad moments bring smiles. Tragedies don't land. It's not cruelty. It's neurological misfire. And it's often one of the most disturbing early signs for family members to witness. 5th, childlike dependence. After his wife passed, 79-year-old Tom became emotionally fused to his adult daughter. He followed her from room to room, waited outside the bathroom, refused to speak to others. He wasn't grieving, he was regressing. His diagnosis? Vascular dementia. As cognitive capacity crumbles, the brain grasps for safety. Often, it latches onto one caregiver who feels familiar. This dependence looks like love, but it's a defensive survival mechanism against a confusing and shrinking world. 6. Excessive sentimentality. Helen, 71, began crying at old greeting cards. She collected toys from her childhood. She talked about her long-dead mother as if they'd just had lunch. Her family thought she was just getting emotional, but the truth was, Alzheimer's had already begun. When the hippocampus and amygdala, centers for memory and emotion, deteriorate, old memories rush forward with overwhelming force. Nostalgia becomes fixation. Warm memories trigger floods of tears. The emotional past starts overriding the present. 7. Strange cravings and eating behaviors. Rodney, 73, diabetic and disinterested in sweets his whole life, began sneaking candy. He mixed jelly into scrambled eggs. He poured syrup over his dinner. His wife thought he was being silly, but what he was really experiencing was damage to the orbitofrontal cortex, impulse control, taste, and reward processing. This is common in behavioral variant FTD. It's not just a sweet tooth, it's the brain's brakes coming off. 8. Obsession with routine. Marianne, 75, had to eat breakfast at 7 a.m. sharp, water her plants in the same order, sit in the same chair every night. If anything disrupted that pattern, she panicked or became aggressive. This was early Alzheimer's in action. As cognitive flexibility collapses, routine becomes sacred. Predictability is a lifeline. When the world starts to feel like chaos, control becomes everything, even if it's just over toast and TV. 9. Emotional flatness. Gary used to cry during movies, laugh at jokes, and argue politics at dinner. Then he went quiet. He sat, stared, and didn't react to much at all. His wife thought it was depression. It wasn't. It was mixed dementia, Alzheimer's and vascular decline working together. Apathy is one of the most common and painful early signs. The lights are on, but no one's emotionally home. These 9 signs are not random personality quirks. They're not just signs of getting older. They are early neurological symptoms, soft alarms that something deeper is happening inside the brain. What's terrifying is how easily they're dismissed. A little clinginess, she's lonely, formal speech, he's being polite, rigidity or odd routines, just a grumpy old habit. But when seen in context, they form a clear pattern. The brain is trying to hold itself together. Memory loss doesn't show up first for many people. For years, dementia can live quietly in the background, expressing itself through behavior, emotional flatness, fixation, and misfiring instincts. And once memory problems begin, it's often late in the game. That's why these early signs matter. They open a window, maybe just a crack, but enough to get in. Enough to seek a diagnosis, enough to adjust lifestyle, reduce risk factors, protect safety, or simply prepare emotionally. So if someone in your life starts behaving in ways that seem strange, too polite, too stuck, too nostalgic, too detached, don't shrug it off. Observe, document, ask questions, and most importantly, take action early, because what looks like a small shift might actually be the first sign that a whole identity is slipping, and there's still time to slow the fall. Thank you for being with us, and remember to take care of each other and be well.